Just a quick background about myself. I'm Tad Labazetta from Triax Technologies. My background is in communications and radio frequency, as well as satellite protocol. And I'm going to explain how that ties into our technology and our network. My background is also in land development. So that's sort of how everything's come together, and I've found my way to Triax. And that being said, we're going to pull up this brief demo on proximity trace. Are we able to see the home screen?
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm going to just turn my video off briefly during the demo so we can get a full screen here. And let's go ahead and jump in. Okay. All right, so welcome guys. Thanks again for taking the time. Happy 4th to everyone. I appreciate getting this in on sort of a pseudo Friday. The reason why we're here is to talk about proximity trace. The goal of proximity trace is to, of course, maintain a safe working distance in the time of COVID-19. How we do that is first with an active alert. That's alerting workers when they become too close and violate that 6-foot proximity. And the second is a passive collection of the data for a contact tracing solution. Before we jump into proximity trace, just a quick overview of our flagship product, which is Spotter. It's important to know that we come from a construction environment. We have been working on construction sites and in heavy industrials for over 4 years at this point. And Spotter, our flagship product, is really an all-encompassing safety worker wearable Internet of Things. So we do everything from access control, evacuation, fall detection beyond 6 feet. We can tag pieces of equipment so that we can see what worker is using the piece of equipment, if they have a proper license. And this is all done in a real-time function with clips checking in every 12 seconds so that we know general worker location, both horizontally and on the vertical axis as well. When there are safety issues on site, such as falls, or when a worker clicks the button on the bottom of their clip to alert a safety manager, a text message or an email is sent in real time so that we can cut down on the response time to emergency, evacuation, etc. And I'm going to loop back into this at the end of the presentation because we do have a path to upgrade available from our proximity trace product, which I'm going to jump into now. So before we do that, I'm going to be using the CDC guidelines, which we follow while trying to produce this product. And basically what that means is we're looking for a 6-foot proximity, and the CDC is focused on a threshold of 15 minutes per day. That's an aggregate count. Could be 5 minutes and 10 minutes or one 15-minute meeting. We're going to use the same language here throughout the presentation. So if we have a subject 0 or a patient 0, that's going to represent our confirmed COVID case on site. Then we have our subject 1s, which are subjects who have come within close proximity of our patient 0. And then after that, we have 1As as well, which are going to be workers that come into contact with our subject 1s. So we can kind of see how this can spider web out quickly and create a serious problem on any type of work site. Here is a more accurate picture of what the proximity trace map would look like. So this is not Spotter, this is proximity trace, a much more simple kind of map. We really only have 2 pieces of hardware. We have our TraceTag, which is worn on the hard hat. And we also have gateways, which are typically placed at entrance points and exit points so that we can grab the data off of these tags. from about 400 feet away in about 1 second's time. So let's jump into those specific pieces of hardware a bit. Again, we have the TraceTag, and this is going to be the active portion of our solution, which is the social distancing alerts. When workers come within a 6-foot proximity roughly, and it's important to keep in mind that with our product, with any product that's out there, you're never going to be exactly at 6 feet. However, our product runs on a radio frequency protocol at 900 megahertz. So it does have some standard deviation and adjustment. We can actually calibrate the signal depending on the workspace and what kind of material to really hone in on as close to that 6-foot proximity as our client wishes, or we can get closer to 1 foot on either side, meaning closer to 5 feet or closer to 7 feet. The tags, when they come within that close contact that we've calibrated, are going to first have a flashing LED. So this blinking green LED you see displayed on the hard hat is going to turn into a flashing red LED. It's going to be quickly followed by a first audible alert, which is what we like to call a just annoying enough chirp. After that initial chirp, if the tags are not separated, a louder siren-like 80 decibel audible comes out. All of these alerts are customizable depending upon workspace and dependent upon the job. May not be appropriate to have the siren on certain jobs. We can adjust that. The second piece of hardware, which we saw on the map, was the gateway, which is what is going to check in with our TraceTag. The gateways are a 5 by 4 by 2 inch deep, fully enclosed node with about a 2 to 4 day built-in battery backup. They plug into just a 12 volt, simple 110 power supply. Uses about the same power as a cell phone charger. So we're talking, very low power. The tags themselves are also IP66 rated. So this is an extremely durable, industrial product that's meant to be on a construction site. It's not a repurposed Fitbit or something that wasn't engineered initially to be on a job site. As you saw with Spotter, this is where we come from, and this is really where our piece of hardware has already been designed for, and we pride ourselves on that. Getting into the network and the protocol a bit more, I mentioned we use a 900 megahertz radio frequency protocol, which is RF or radio frequency. We have no dependency on Wi-Fi or internet, so we're not going to be hooking into your IT infrastructure on any job site, which is important for several reasons, including that some new builds, most, will not even have a robust Wi-Fi or internet setup initially. Our network is extremely scalable and only is going to rely on plugging in these gateways, again, at egress and ingress points where we have our exits and our entrances. There is no data location on this. So we have no GPS, no locational data whatsoever. This is not going to violate privacy laws, which we think is extremely important about the product in getting its application out. So no worry of privacy or real time and location with this product. That's been removed. In terms of the battery life, this is another piece that we really pride ourselves on. Because we don't use GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, we have an extended battery life on these clips. Typically, the battery life is between 1 and 3 months. The clips can be recharged in about 8 hours, and we're going to get into how we can quickly swap out clips in just a second. And that's really the main function of our protocol and our pieces of hardware. I'd like to show you guys a very quick demo video. It's a little bit crude. We were, forced to film this during quarantine period, but I would like to let you guys you see and hear the noise audibles. So we're going to go ahead and start this video.
Yeah, but that thing might be hot right now. And actually, be careful with that. I think it's still got power, so.
All right, so I just wanted to show you that so that you had an idea of what the audible alerts sounded like. Again, I want to stress that that's customizable, dependent on the work environment. That is the hardware in a nutshell. What I'd like to jump into now and what you're looking at is going to be our dashboard and the second piece of our Proximity Trace product, which is the more passive side, the collection of contact tracing information. So what you're looking at now is our home page, which is the worker page. This is an actual site. So for purposes of privacy, we've blacked out the last names of the workers. That's why you'll see this black here as well as at the top of the screen. But what we are looking at right here is just a simple page showing a list of worker profiles as well as the serial tag number for the device that they're wearing. This would be the screen where we can quickly change out a tag if we have a low battery life. And if you do have low battery life, we're going to be sending detailed email reports at 20% and different 10%, etc., so that you have plenty of time, days, even weeks, to get the tag onto a charger, either swap it out for a temp or just change it out for your worker. The worker profile is going to hold all of the information regardless of tag. You will have historic data on what tag was worn on what date. We also have a scanner gun that can be used on site to scan and change out tags instead of doing it manually on this worker management page. Moving forward to our reporting, which is really where we pride ourselves. What you're looking at here is an aggregate of minutes of close contact during a date range. In this case, what we're looking at is just one particular day, and this will allow the user to get a snapshot of the total aggregate minutes spent in close proximity. This will allow you to take a look at, for example, Javier, and try and figure out why he's having so many minutes of close interaction, more than double some of these workers, and it'll help you hopefully identify some solutions to your problems before you have an issue on site. But let's look at the more relevant case of patient 0 or COVID positive on site. In this case, we're looking at Gregory, who, let's say, has called in. He's home with a fever. He's gone and gotten a test. He's COVID positive. As soon as we start to type in Gregory's name right here into the worker box, it's going to populate. You're able to click his worker profile, and it's going to default to a group by day setting. We can look at any date range. In this case, again, we're looking at one specific date. on that date, we can see an aggregate that Gregory had 43 minutes of close contact with Brian. So we've quickly identified a subject one, and the company can quickly react using their policy and procedures that are in place to hopefully get this worker off site. And then maybe we want to look at Paul as well, who's incredibly close to that 15-minute threshold. If we want a more detailed explanation of these interactions, we can ungroup this group by day setting, and we can break out, for example, here in the middle, all of the close proximity interaction that Gregory had with Brian. So we see it in a 5-minute, an 11-minute, a 9-minute, and a 5-minute interaction. This can be, extremely important for interpreting your data and how long these pieces of close proximity, these meetings of close proximity were within each worker. Down here again, we see Paul had a 13-minute interaction with no interruption. So that may change the way that your policies and procedures, react to this type of situation. We're presenting, all of the data through this dashboard, but also everything can be downloaded into a CSV file. And we are extremely white glove when it comes to customer service. If we have a client with a COVID positive on case, we're going to get you digestible, detailed reports as well on the back end, so that it'll be easier to identify possible subject ones and subject 1As and cut down on the reaction time for getting these folks off of the site, or maybe we want to get them a temperature check, again, whatever the policy and procedure is at that time. Just to do a quick recap, that's really the product. We have the two pieces of hardware, and then we have our integrated dashboard. That dashboard is hosted on an Amazon-based cloud. All of the data is owned by the end user, which is very important. When it comes to privacy, we have had individuals use an employee identification number rather than first and last name, for example, and have an HR department hold a matrix with that information so that only a few individuals have that information. An extra added layer of privacy can be very important on some job sites. So we encourage that. And again, the data on the Amazon hosted cloud is owned by the end user. It is your data, and you're able to always look at that data going back to the inception or the launch of Proximity Trace. But the goal, of course, is to keep operations moving forward, provide the proactive support for the social distancing, and condition our workers to begin complying. We want to limit the number of subject ones and be able to identify them quickly, and basically just keep your business either getting back to normal or running fully staffed, and avoiding any type of prolonged shutdowns and things of that nature. Just to loop quickly back to the Spotter product, again, that is something that has a path to upgrade from our Proximity Trace product. So if you like the features that Spotter offers, that is something that we can integrate down the road when hopefully we are past COVID and there is a vaccine or a permanent type of solution to this problem. But that is basically Proximity Trace. Would love to hear any questions that you have, and jump right into that.
Awesome. Thanks, Ted, for sharing all that. Yeah, I had a few
problem
that came to mind that I would love to walk through. So, and to kind of piggyback off what you just recently said, so if there in the future there is going to be a way that if I already have Spotter to upgrade with Proximity Trace, and or if I start with Proximity Trace to integrate with Spotter?
So there is a path to upgrade Proximity Trace to Spotter. We do not have Proximity Trace integrated with Spotter. It may be something down the line, but at this point we don't really know, and I don't think anyone knows the window of time that we're going to have where proximity trace is needed. Again, we love that we can help folks out and that this is a product that seems to be very useful and in high demand at the moment, but we would like to obviously see a permanent solution, and we don't know when that timeline will be. I imagine if it's a prolonged period of years, that type of thing, that's something that we would look to do, is integrate some of the proximity trace functions into other products across our board, but there's no direct plan at the moment.
Got it. So if I was interested in getting proximity trace, how would I get started? What information would you need from me, and how would I get the hardware to site?
The first thing that we would do is, again, we have a very, white glove type of customer service. The first thing that we do is work with you to get an idea of square footage and the layout and the mapping. Specifically, those entrance and exit points are key. Our tags are always going to be communicating, even off-site, which is important to understand. When they check into the gateways, we're pulling that information. But if you have two workers who, for example, go off-site after the day ends or at lunch break, and they violate the close proximity, they go to lunch together, a smoke break, whatever it may be, once they come back on site, we're going to pull that information, and we will have the proximity, the close proximity interactions recorded. Again, we don't have the where, because that's not important to us with this product, and we don't want to be tracking location, but we will pull that information even if it's off-site. So I think that's a terrific feature that safeguards job sites outside of the door as well, into parking lots and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, and you made a point, I think it's important to reiterate that, there's no GPS, no location data that's being collected and stored. But if I'm a worker that has this trace tag on my hard hat and I go home, is that information still being collected, or at what point does it stop being collected?
Fantastic question. So the tags are only going to record information when they're in close proximity with another tag. Once our tag is placed idle, no vibration, we can detect small movement and breathing when the tag is worn. But once the tag is set down for 5 minutes, it's going to go into a sleep mode. So it won't be tracking in the home unless there are multiple people in that home on the same job site using, the same trace tag. However, again, all that information, is collected once you re-enter a gateway, but no, there would be no offsite tracking, and the device would go into sleep mode to save battery roughly 5 minutes after being taken off. Okay. Yeah.
And then with that white glove service, do you guys do any of the installation, or is that on me to install? How does that work?
With proximity trace, the installation is incredibly easy. Again, the gateways use the same amount of power as a cell phone charger, and setting them up is, basically as challenging as setting up, a cell phone charger. We will look at the mapping of the job site and see where we need to have gateways, and we'll ensure that there are enough at every point that's needed so that information is grabbed. We can also put these in, areas that are of high traffic, such as lunchrooms, places like that, so that we can grab information as quickly as possible, and we're even able to get maybe a midday, kind of reading of where everyone is on their aggregate close proximity for the day.
Okay. And how does the trace tag affix to the hard hat?
TraceTag affixes to the hard hat via a mount that our engineers have been using on the product since Spotter. It's easily affixable. There's actually a couple of different methods. It can be on the front, or we can even put it on the back if, you know, necessary. We know we have some customers that really like, you know, their labeling and their brand to be on their hard hats. So we can work with you in that regard. We do recommend that it's worn on the front of the hard hat to get you the best 360-degree angle and to improve accuracy with face-to-face communication. So in the case of proximity trace, it's highly, highly recommended that it's on the front of the hard hat. We have a little bit more room for, you know, putting it on the back, etc., with spotter, where we're not looking for that close proximity. But to get the most accurate face-to-face, you know, close to 6 feet as possible, we do recommend that you affix it to the front of the hard hat. And we do have, you know, several different ways we can do that, that are permanent versus non, that our engineering team can work with you on to customize and make sure that it's correct for the end user.
Okay. And none of those ways really compromise the integrity of the hard hat or interfere with like OSHA regulations, right?
No, nothing like that. Everything that we do is, you know, OSHA compliant. This is something on the outside of the hat. We also actually have an intrinsically safe version of our product as well. So if we're in an environment with, you know, petrochemical combustibles, things like that, we can use an intrinsically safe clip, or tag rather, which is another fantastic feature about our product line, and one that I think separates us from some of our competitors.
Okay. And have you guys had experience or navigated even just high security clearance sites? Is there any issue with using this product on those type of job sites?
Typically, we don't get pushback because we do not use GPS. That's usually the biggest thing that we see unions and companies that are worried about security. I think that using a matrix, as I mentioned, instead of using first and last names, really takes the a lot of the security problems out of the hands of your day-to-day managers. And, you know, only the folks that are in HR that are used to handling sensitive information will have that. And I think that's a great way to approach this product if you're, you know, working on any type of entity that's, you know, high security, or where you have, you know, issues with privacy, unions, etc. I just want to stress this is, you know, a safety device. So we always recommend to make sure the end user knows that this is something to keep you safe. We're not looking to track where you are. It's not the purpose of the device. We really want to, you know, try and eliminate COVID positives and the spread of COVID positives on a site, and you know, keep the site up and running. And that's really the goal of the product. And I think most end users can kind of see that bigger picture and understand that it's everyone's livelihood, right? So that's how I like to sort of approach that that problem. And I think when it's looked at logically, it does make sense.
Yeah. I mean, because even at the end of the day, it sounds like the only information you're really, you know, I wouldn't say collecting, but tracking is some sort of individual identifier, which could be just your first name or an employee number, but nothing really beyond that.
Absolutely. No location. And the data is owned by our end user. You know, it is not our data. We typically, you know, will have an NDA with every company that we work with. This is not data that, you know, we're looking to harvest or collect in any way.
Got it. And then how do users typically manage battery swaps or just manage the hardware in general? Does that become a fairly time-intensive responsibility, or does that become automatic?
That's a really great question. So we look typically at two different models with proximity trace. The one that we prefer is a take-home model, where you assign a worker a permanent clip. It goes home with them every night. This way we can eliminate an extra added sanitation process, as well as an unneeded close proximity contact at the beginning or the end of the day with a supervisor. I think that also takes the time and the burden off of those supervisors. And then what we have is just clips are always going to be coming at, are going to be draining battery at slightly different times, because you may have somebody working 8 hours versus 10. Somebody throws the clip, you know, down on the kitchen table the second they get home versus somebody who, you know, forgets they have it on until they go to bed. So you'll always have an opportunity to get these clips swapped out. And what we recommend is having, you know, for let's say every 100 to 150 workers, 10 extra clips on site for people who are visitors, and so that we can temporarily swap out clips for the day for workers who are becoming low on battery. There is an alternative, or a few alternatives. Some companies, you know, don't wish to have their workers take this device home. If that's the case, you know, they can be sanitized daily with an isopropyl alcohol wipe, and you know, quickly issued to a worker at contractors. Already have equipment related relationships with the subcontractors on site. So they'll do some type of hold where, you know, there's either a deposit or a chargeback if, you know, the clips are not returned at the end of the project. So that's typically, you know, how the two routes that is that our customers kind of take. I prefer, you know, the first, but it's not always applicable, and sometimes, you know, job sites like to have a little bit more control. In that case, there would be a little bit more of a burden, I would say, on management, but we try and make that extremely quick with the scanner gun and the very simple dashboard that we showed you.
Got it. And then if I were to move from one job site to another, would I go through Triax to set up a new job site, and you would help us organize that? Or because I can't anticipate that we just bring stuff over, right?
So are you asking if there's multiple job sites under one job, let's say?
I was saying, let's just say it's a shorter job site. We're packing up, we're relocating, or, you know, we're starting another job site. We'd like to use proximity trace on that job site. We'd like to move all that stuff over and continue the process. That new job site would need to get set up as a brand new location for proximity trace, right?
Correct, it would. You know, we'd consider it obviously another location. But, you know, in the case of proximity trace, if you have the hardware and you're looking to, you know, continue, you know, let's say 6 months down the line, we do have the ability to put, you know, subscription contracts in place, and, you know, you can move the tags to the next job site because you will own these tags. In terms of the network setup, you know, again, setting up the gateways is extremely easy. It's not like our spotter product where, you know, we roll out a team to set up the network. We can this is an easily mobile and scalable network that, again, just needs to be within 200 to 400 feet roughly of entrance and exit points to quickly pull that data off of the worker in about a second. So it's very similar to, you know, Easy Pass, or, you know, going through a toll. It's going to be a seamless transaction that the worker is unaware of, no swiping or anything like that.
Got it. And then with job sites with a lot of subcontractors, I mean, is this something that's typically built into a contract with subs so that they will use it as well? Because I'm assuming there might be issues if only half the job sites using proximity trace, right?
Correct. We're typically implemented on, you know, an ownership or general contracting level.
Got it.
We feel that works best without having, you know, every worker on site with a tag. You know, we run the risk of contamination without having proper contact tracing. And that's why we also encourage, you know, having tags for visitors, even if, you know, somebody from, you know, an ownership side who's not a on-site worker comes on site, let's get them a tag issued temporarily. We can put their first name, last name, whatever we need to quickly in a worker profile in about, 10 seconds. And this way, if God forbid something does happen on site, we can really get in touch with every single person and know with confidence that we've done our best to, mitigate, our responsibility to, inform everyone. So I would definitely recommend having, everyone on site, and that's typically our model.